faceoff. Shoots it, deflected, right in. Pietrangelo save, rebound. Stopped by Pietrangelo. I don't believe that save. Neither does Peter Stastny. He can't believe the save that Pietrangelo just made on him as Frankie Sparkly. Now that maneuver there to stop and rob Peter Stastny. He should get 5 to 10 for that.
Hello and welcome to episode 115 of Tendy Talk, presented by the Hockey Podcast Network and the BLPA Podcast Networks. I'm your host, Joe, better known as Wash Up Goalie on social media. Well, did you miss the podcast? I sure did. I wasn't planning on taking such a long break when we moved from Minnesota to Atlanta earlier this summer, but shortly after moving down here, we lost my father-in-law, who had made the move with us, and I just wasn't feeling like putting the podcast out for a while. On top of that, as soon as we moved in, we started a major kitchen renovation, and I had to build out my home office. So I took the time I needed to get stuff done. But here we are, the end of the year, and another new episode of Tendy Talk. I'm back, and I intend to keep things pretty regular with weekly episodes from here on out. Since you had to wait so long for a new episode, I thought I should have a big guest, and I'm not sure there's a bigger one than a 5-time Stanley Cup winner and Hockey Hall of Famer named Grant Fuhr. So, without further ado, let's get to the conversation with Grant. All right, well, Grant, hey, it's great to get you on the podcast. As I mentioned in my emails going back and forth with, I believe, your wife, Lisa, the podcast is I talk to goalies of all ages and skill levels. So I've had, bantam goalies on up to, Eddie Belfour and Kelly Rudy and Scott Darling. So it's fun to have it every end of the spectrum. And I would say you're on the far end of the spectrum of the greats, 5 Stanley Cups and Hall of Fame and all that good stuff.
I get the old section covered. So,
well, not just that. I mean, and we'll get into it. Your career spanned eras of goaltending. I mean, if we just look at your masks, you started out with the old fiberglass and you finished up wearing the modern day mask. So you really were a bridge from era to era.
Yeah, you know what? I was lucky enough to play 3 different decades. So it's fun to play in the old fiberglass mask and right up till the bitter end. I mean, I enjoyed playing and I enjoyed the different transitions of equipment and that sort of thing. So it was a lot of fun.
I did have a high school teammate once asked, what would you have done if you played in the days when goalies didn't wear masks? And I just looked at him. I said, I would have been a forward. Like, I may be a goalie, but I'm not stupid.
I tried it once in practice just to see what it was going to be like. That lasted about 10 minutes.
Yeah. I went out once without a mask on. I was in high school, and my timing with my hands just wasn't there, and the ice was ready early, and so the coach, he told me, he said, come on, grab your stuff, let's go out there. So he did, and he said, all right, leave your mask on the net. And I just looked at him, he goes, do you trust me? And it's like, well, no, not really. But he said, I'm not going to fire him at you. I'm just, I'm going to lob him in there like a good warm-up. And, so now the teammates are gathering around the glass and they're watching me without my mask on as the coach starts shooting pucks at me. And none of them missed the gloves that day.
It's funny how your hands get better.
Yeah, it is. When I was talking to Kelly Rudy, we were talking about kids growing up today. When they get a bruise, they're like, "Ooh, I maybe need to check my equipment. I'm getting bruises. I feel the puck." Where, when we were growing up, wearing 2-piece chest protectors and brown leather leg pads, your hands were a little bit better because if you got your hands in the way, you were less likely to get that bruise.
Oh, yeah. You wore lots of bruises, but at the same time, your hands became really good because the more you could catch, the less it hurt.
Exactly. So I like to start every conversation with the goalie off the same way as, how did you get started with the game of hockey? I mean, yeah, you're a Canadian, so it's a birthright, but, lacrosse is the national pastime. But, how did you get started with the game of hockey?
That's what my friends all did. Everybody played hockey and such, and for me, nobody wanted to be the goalie. So we played in an outdoor rink, and I thought the equipment looked great. Thought it'd be a really cool thing to play, and then figured out that you could play all the time, and you got invited to play with more than one team. So I took a shining to it and stuck with the position right to the last day I played.
No, I remember in watching the documentary Making Coco, when you started, you were catching with your left hand.
I was. They didn't have
because
gloves for my
that's all
right
they
hand.
had.
So I
What
learned
made you switch though? I mean, having learned the one way, what made you switch to catch right-handed?
catching right-handed was natural for me. So when I played baseball in the summer, I would catch with my right hand. I threw with my left hand. So when I did get a pair of gloves, I think I was about 12 or 13 years old, I made the switch and it just felt more comfortable. I shoot a puck right-handed so I could catch with my right hand and everything just
Mm-hmm.
kind of fell into place.
You know, fellow Southpaw goalie Mike McKenna, he talks about how more goalies probably should be catching with their right hand because, most of us when we skate out are probably right-handed shots. So it would make more sense if we were catching with our right hand for that reason, for playing the puck. But for whatever reason, just because we, catch a baseball with the left hand doesn't mean we necessarily need to catch a hockey puck with that hand either.
No, I mean, I learned to play both ways, and there were still practices, even when I got to the NHL, where I would switch gloves and wear the other hand just to keep reminding myself I could still do it, and it was still comfortable, and could still play that way if I really had to.
Yeah, and probably catch your teammates off guard too. They're coming down expecting a blocker to be there.
Well, you could have some fun with it in practice.
Yeah, that's what practice is for. I say it all the time to some of my buddies and my son's friends who play hockey is it's practice that you miss the most when, the competitive days are over because that's where most of the fun is. Yeah, the wins and on the ice are fun, but it's those antics at practice and in the locker room that you miss the most.
Oh, most definitely. When you retire, it's the going to the locker room to see the guys, the fun that you have with the guys. You get out, you enjoy practice, the little games after practice. Practice could get old sometimes, but it's the little games and stuff after practice that are fun.
Absolutely. And like you said, the locker room and the stuff that happens in there. And, I've said it too, is if they're not picking on you in the locker room, that means they don't like you.
Yeah, pretty much. If they're picking on you, then you're okay. So.
Yeah, exactly. Getting back to the documentary, there was something that jumped out at me that you said, being on the ice is your sanctuary. And I don't know about other, at least beer league goalies, but I think when COVID hit, we all realized how true that was. And just being on that ice, sometimes doesn't matter what's going on. You get on that ice and everything just clears up. It's almost like your mind turns off when you get on the ice.
No, and that's the beauty of it is you get into your own little world and the game allows you to get away from life. So one, it's fun to be there, but two, it's a 4-hour break from reality where you just get to go play a game. You get to be a kid again. And I still do that on the golf course now. I just basically traded from being on the ice to trading it to being on the golf course now, where I still enjoy that 4 hours where you can just kind of tune the world out.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, I got to bet that's what the golf course now is your, like you said, 4 hours of just tuning the world out and decompressing.
Yeah, I actually found it relaxing. Playing goal, I found relaxing. Playing golf, I find relaxing. So some people don't quite see it that way, but I found it enjoyable, and it didn't matter what was going on in life. Once I got the gear on and got on the ice, everything was good.
Yeah, last night I had a beer league game, and we've been having a good season, and we wound up having our first loss of the season, and it was a rough game. I think I saw 60 shots, and we lost pretty handedly. And after the game, I'm looking around the locker room, and everybody's got their heads on. I'm like, well, that was fun. We just got our butts kicked. And it's like, yeah, but we got to go out and play hockey, and we're a bunch of old guys. Like, this was fun.
That's the beauty of being a goalie is when you look at it that way, you get to put the gear on, you get to go play. I mean, I played right up until I had my knees replaced, and I would still love to get out and play. So it's a place I love being.
I totally get that. So, when we talk about your career, you come up and you were drafted 8th overall in a time when goalies really weren't taken very high. But not only that, you were drafted by the Edmonton Oilers, who had this young kid by the name of Andy Moog. When you saw that, you had to have been thinking, well, great. I'm not going to be playing much.
Oh, no, I thought I was going back to junior for another couple of years. They had Andy, they had Gary Edwards, Ronnie Lowe, Eddie Mio. So, I mean, they had a lot of NHL experience. So, in a sense, it made it easier for me because I could just go play, not even thinking about being there. I mean, I just assumed I was going back to junior. So, it freed me up to just play and enjoy training camp. I mean, most guys find training camp is kind of pressure filled, and I get to enjoy it because I'm watching all these NHL goalies and what they're doing and just trying to learn from them.
Yeah. And then you finally do get your shot. You lose that first game, which, that happens. But then you went on to win 23 straight games. At that point, Andy's got to be thinking, well, great. Now I'm not going to play.
It was weird. It was a weird year. I lose my first one, and then when we go 23 without a defeat. I think we had a couple of ties in there, but
yeah,
you couldn't ask for your first year to go any better. I mean, to get a career started, pretty fortunate, and lots of good breaks, and that's the comforting part. But then my second year kind of hit a crash and burn, which happens to a lot of guys as well. Is you're still trying to find yourself, and now everybody's figured you out. So the combination of the two makes that second year a little bit of a bumpy road.
Well, and not only that, you got sent down, and as you say in the documentary, to put it nicely, you spoke out against the fans a little bit.
Yeah,
that kind of led to sending you down. But rather than get upset about it, you let that be a teaching moment.
Yeah, when you stick a size 10 in your mouth, it doesn't taste very good. So you gotta pay penance for doing dumb things. Yeah, and at 19 years old, that will not go down as one of my highlights. But you learn from it. I think that's the biggest thing is you have to learn from it. So I went down, and actually Mess's dad was the coach down there at that time, and I had played for Doug before. So it was a comfortable spot to go to kind of get my bearings back again.
And like you said, I mean, it's not like you spent too much time down there. You came back up to the big club, and I guess I could say the rest is history. Had some decent time, and let's not ignore the elephant in the room. You're playing for the Edmonton Oilers during that time. Guys won a few games, got your names on a nice little drinking bowl a few times. But I asked Kelly Rudy the same question. Actually, I phrased it different. I asked him, what was it like going into practice with the legend Marty McSorley's curve on his stick. But, let's be honest, you're skating with guys like Gretzky every day, Messier. You can go up and down that whole roster. Everybody, knows the names of the 80 Oilers. What was that like? That had to have been worse than games.
Oh, no. Practices were a lot harder than the games.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going against some of the best players in the world, and they're determined to score. And I learned a lot from Ronnie Lowe. You don't like to give up goals in practice. You never quit on anything. So practice actually became hard work. And in a sense, we got better because of it, because we'd have drills where if they scored, you had to skate. If they couldn't score, then they had to skate. And everybody knows goalies hate skating. So it made the drills pretty competitive.
Yeah. And that's always, I remember I grew up in Chicago during the Jordan era, and, they would say, well, Michael just made everybody better because of his skill level and his compete level. And you hear the stories about Wayne, and he's not much different than Michael Jordan. Maybe a little nicer in the on the ice than Michael was on the court to his opponents, but kind of the same way. They elevated those around him.
No, and that's the true version of a superstar, is you make the people around you better. And you look at Wayne, you look at Mess. Those are two true superstars. Everybody around them got better when you played with them. I mean, they just by their example and their leadership, it forced you to be better.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what you want. And I mean, he had a great coach too at the helm. Again, to make that comparison to the Bulls with Phil Jackson, you guys had a coach that understood the different personalities on the team, and that each person needed to be handled differently, and that was okay.
Yeah, no, Glenn was great that way, where he wanted us to grow up. kind of at our own pace, but at the same time with a little bit of herding going along, where he allowed us to make our own mistakes, which you want to do when you're growing up. And when he'd give you enough rope that when the rope got a little too long towards the end, he'd yank you back. And it was as much a father figure as he was a coach, where he allowed us to grow into men. And we were all just kids at that time. So I think I was the baby of the group at 18, and the old guys were 20. So,
Yeah.
I think that was the fun part, is we all get to grow up together.
And you guys were in Canada, so you guys were barely of drinking age there, yet alone coming to the States.
Yeah, the States not so much.
Yeah,
but we got to experience a lot. I think that was the fun part, is you got to go to see some different cities, some different places that growing up in Alberta you heard stories about, but you never knew really existed. So those first few road trips were big eye openers, where you get a chance to see New York City, you get a chance to see LA. I mean, Studio 54 was still open in New York. Got a chance to see that, even though we're probably not of age. I can say that now.
Well, and that's what I think about too, of, those teams, is like, thank God social media didn't exist, I'm guessing.
Oh, no, I played in the era where you could have fun.
Yeah.
There's no question about it that we played in the right era. I mean, yes, the guys are making a ton of money right now, but they're missing out on a ton of fun. I think that's the other thing. We got to enjoy the fruits of our labor.
And, you talk about the fun. I've heard some of, Jeremy Roenick's stories and Chris Chelios' stories and some of that. And it's like, they could never get away with half of that stuff today. And, I'm not saying right or wrong, but it's like, that's part of being young. The players today can't be young the way they're
allowed to grow up.
Yeah.
And we literally hid in plain sight. You went to the same bars as the fans. You hung out in the same places as the fans. So they got used to being around you, seeing you. So you literally hid in plain sight.
And you played in an era too where I would say every arena was uniquely different. Some of the great cathedrals of the game: Chicago Stadium, Montreal Forum, Maple Leaf Garden. Even the dumps, like in St. Louis, and I'm a born and raised Hawks fan, so I always say St. Louis. I'm not a huge fan of them.
The old arena.
Yeah, the old arena. I never made it in there, but I drove by and it's like, it literally is a barn that they're playing in.
Checker Dome at that time.
Yeah.
So it was old. There's no question.
Character. But today you go into the arenas and the only thing that's different is the facade on the outside. Once you get inside, they're all the same for the most part.
Yeah, they're all pretty vanilla. I mean, some of the old buildings, like the Boston Garden, Chicago Stadium, Maple Leaf Gardens, the old Montreal Forum, the Spectrum in Philadelphia, Nassau Coliseum, they were all fun to play in because they were all different. They all had different character. You look at the old Autumn Buffalo, kind of a neat old building. They all had their different traits to them, and you had to learn the buildings as much as you did the other team because pucks bounced differently. Some of the rinks were a little smaller than other rinks. So there was a lot of learning on.
I remember Chicago Stadium had the narrower
the neutral zone.
But then
Boston Garden had square corners.
The stadium had that great pipe organ, and of course the anthem. Nothing beats the anthem in Chicago.
No, there's still nothing like it.
Yeah, I remember reading the quote from Gretzky that he said, "It's the greatest thing ever." Even as a visiting player, just being out there and hearing it.
Oh no, there's no question. The anthem there is special. I mean, it's unfortunate that the kids today don't get a chance to witness that because that was something to be a part of.
Yeah. They still carry on that tradition in Chicago, but the United Center, it's bigger. So it doesn't get, the sound isn't bouncing as much off the walls with that big pipe organ. So it's still loud, but it's not what it was.
That's what it is. It doesn't ring in your ears now. It actually filters through the building, whereas back then it just came straight down onto the ice and it would ring through your ears.
There was something about walking through the concourse, your feet stick into the ground from all of the spilt beer over the literal decades of that place. And, there'd be the fights in the stands. It was an education for a kid going to a Blackhawks game. And and that the neighborhood it was in back in those days was not a neighborhood you went to if it wasn't game night.
Yeah, not the place you're going to hang out just for the fun of it.
No.
You went to the hockey game and you were out right after the game.
Yeah, you paid the extra money to park in the lot right there across the street, and the neighborhood has changed considerably since then. My dad was a Chicago fireman, and his firehouse was 3 blocks away for many years, and that was in the transition time, and it was really interesting to see that transition from the slums to what it is today with high-priced lofts and everything else.
Oh, no, I've got some friends that live in Chicago, so we're there once in a while, and just to see the transition of that area around the city, and it's different. There's no question about it.
Yeah, and it's a good thing, too. We get back to talking about your teammate Gretzky. You reunited with him when you went to L.A. That had to be nice to have a familiar face when you went there, but it was really him who got you to St. Louis.
Yeah, that's so the story goes. Yeah, no, it was good to play with him. Charlie Huddy was there, Koff was there, Mike Kruzhelnicki, Marty, Patty Conacher. So there was a lot of Edmonton guys in LA when I got there. And then I ended up signing in St. Louis after Mike Keenan had reached out, and Jeff Courtnall was there. Charlie Huddy ended up there, Esa Tikkanen. So a bunch of guys that I was pretty comfortable with that kept showing up in the same spots. And then when I retired to go start coaching, I ended up with Gretz and Phoenix there as well. So
it's almost like he wanted you around, but then again, he also is on record calling you, the best goalie to play the game. So he clearly thinks highly of your playing days.
Yeah, pretty good guy to have on your side. But
yeah, some would say he knows a thing or two about the game, but then even John Muckler, he's on record of calling you the Gretzky of goaltending too. So, I think of some of the younger goalies today, it's like they need to go back and watch some of the YouTube videos of guys like you and, Ken Dryden, even early days of Patrick Waugh. They know who they are, but they don't know, what you guys really did.
Yeah, it wasn't about percentages and just taking space. You actually had to make saves.
Yeah.
So you found a way to be mobile in gear that weighed 25 pounds.
So I want to ask this question. I want to ask it specifically for my high school teammates, because we got into a Facebook group argument. It was all of them against me. And my one teammate, Ryan, came on and he goes, he claimed that the goalies of the 80s were trash because of how many goals they let in, that, today's average goalie would have been a Hall of Famer back then. And I said, absolutely not. The goalies of the 80s were playing in a time when defense didn't exist. The goalie was fair game wherever he was on the ice. The equipment was half the size. And they were much more athletic. I think the goalies of the 80s could dominate in today's game, but I don't think all of today's goalies could dominate in the 80s.
No, you give them the equipment's 20 pounds heavier. Things actually hurt. Things hurt when you get hit. That weeds out a few guys. Mm-hmm. And you had to be mobile. I think that's the other thing that people don't realize is you actually had to be mobile back then. So you're seeing it now. The last couple of years in the transition of the game, guys just can't go down and take angles away now. You actually have to be mobile again, and it's starting to weed some guys out a little bit.
Yeah, well, and even simple plays like Brady Tkachuk the other night when he has the penalty shot and out comes the poke check and he got upset. That was an every game occurrence back then. In fact, I did it last.
You wanted that as part of your repertoire, where you could pull that out whenever you needed it. And guys today have never seen it, so I think it was more of a shock to them.
Yeah, it was. And all of us old goalies are going, I love it. In fact, in my game last night, there was a guy coming down on a breakaway, and he was coming from my glove side, and I went, well, I know what I'm doing. Stack the pads, put the poke check out there, and he panicked, put it right into me. And the other goalie after the game, he was just laughing. He goes, I love it. I don't see that nearly enough, even in the beer leagues. No,
you don't see it at all anymore. No more 2 pad stacks, no turning a foot out to make a save.
Yeah. Yeah, I think back to when when I first started playing, again, my first chest protector, it was that 2-piece chest protector that really protected nothing. Why they called it a chest protector, I don't know. But we
made the bruise small.
So, our definitions of small are very different then. It was like you could always tell when the season started because it was almost like you had a full sleeve tattoo, but it was just bruises.
I remember that. I remember people saying that your arms are covered in bruises. You've got bruises on your chest, and that was just that just meant it was hockey season. That's the way it was.
The rink I skated at growing up, they had Steve Larmer come sign an autographs for the youth association. So we're in line, me and my teammates, and we get up to the front, and my teammates are like, "Yeah, this is our goalie." And Larmer looks over at me, goes, "Prove it." So I pulled up my pant legs and showed all the bruises. He goes, "Yep, you're the goalie." So like we alluded to earlier, you bridged these eras of the game. In the game changed so much from when you started to when you finished. But one of the things that changed more than anything was the mask. You started with that fiberglass. You wore the combo. You wore the early, crude version of today's mask to finally today's mask. What was that like with the evolution, and how open were you to trying the newer versions as they came out? Because goalies, we're stubborn. It's not like we like to try new things often.
But equipment wise, skates, I never really changed a whole lot. My upper body stuff, they'd send new stuff. I'd have to cut pieces out of it because I wanted it to feel like the old stuff. So the bruises were right through to the bitter end. I liked my equipment a little bit heavier because that's what I grew up with. So my pads were always a little heavier than most guys. But the mask transition, I love the fiberglass mask. It was a little easier on your head with the transition. So the first one I had done was Greg Harrison made for me. It was a lighter transition of it. And then as the years went, Jerry Wright started to make them for me. And they got a little bit heavier, a little bit better. So I get to see the full transition of the mask where you actually got hit and it didn't hurt at all by the time I finished. Yeah. So when I started, it hurt. It's like somebody hit you in the face with a baseball bat. But they'd always say, "Well, you didn't get cut." Okay, great. Still got a big lump on your head, but
still hurts.
It still hurt. Still had a nice big knot on your head. But at the same time, I love the old mask because you could paint it the way you wanted. It gave you a little bit of flair. And the vision out of it was fabulous because it was so close to your face. It's just like looking without a mask on.
Yep. Well, and even the combo mask. In college, I started out with a mask, and then I got a wicked concussion, so I went to a Hasek style mask because back then the NCAA didn't allow the cat eye cage, so I went with the Hasek style, and I loved it for that reason. The visibility is as good as the modern day mask is. There's still a little bit of that visibility to the side that you catch the side. It is just so much better in the mobility of it because I was dumb. I didn't wear the dangler, and I just had more mobility. And my teammates are like, "You're something else. Wearing that helmet." It's like, I'm a goalie. I know I'm something else.
When I first transitioned, I wore the original cat's eye, so bigger with just a single bar down the middle.
Yeah.
And that gave you a good clean look at everything as well.
Yeah, but it gave you the clean look, but it just took one shot to it that, you got that dent in there and had to get the new cage.
We replaced a few cages along the way.
And when we talk equipment, you wore one of my favorite pieces of equipment that I know some people, they see the pictures and they're like, "God, I hate that thing." And that was that DNR neck protector. To me, I loved that thing because it was like that T-shirt that had the little breastplate in there, but that neck roll, it came apart so easy that you could wash it and it didn't stink, but it still gave some great protection. And it's like, I wish somebody would make one like that again today. I would buy it tomorrow.
Yeah, no, originally I started with a turtleneck that our trainer, Barry Stafford, sewed some ballistic nylon in. Because after Clint Malarchuk got his throat cut, he decided we wanted to switch to something. And then DNR came out with that. And to throw it on like an extra T-shirt just made it that much more comfortable. And you peeled it off, you threw it in your laundry bag, it got washed with the rest of your underwear, so it was fresh every day.
Yep.
And I actually really like that piece.
Yeah, I think it's one of the for a minor piece of equipment, one of the best pieces I've ever owned, and I wish somebody would make one today. Maybe use the new performance moisture wicking shirt instead, so it's not like the old leg pads where it weighs 15 pounds after the game. So somebody's missing out on making it. If I had the means, I'd go into business making them.
Oh no, and neck protection is going to become a big deal coming up here in the next year or so. So, I mean, I love the old DNR. I mean,
yeah,
it was simple. You threw it on. I mean, towards the end, I even got a couple of long sleeve versions of it, so I didn't have to wear a shirt underneath it. So it's literally just the shirt you put on.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was for me. It was the shirt I put on.
Yeah, well, my first ones were just a little, almost like a bib.
Yeah.
So little, came to about mid chest. That was it, and then went to the full version of it. And yeah, I'm actually surprised that more companies haven't come out with it the last little while.
Yeah, my mom loved it for the reason you said. You could wash it every skate. You just pop that little plastic piece out because it had that little window. You could pop that out, and the neck roll pulled right on out. So every skate, that thing was going in the wash with my socks and everything else. Whereas, the ones today, Kova is the one that known for making the best one right now. But to throw that in the washing machine, you can't do that. And that's more of
the beauty of it before. You could wash it. It was fresh every day. You'd have 2 or 3 of them. So it was always comfortable.
Yeah. And mom loved my stuff to be clean because she hated the smell of my equipment down. And we had hot water heat. So I would hang my stuff from the pipes in the basement so that it would dry out. So our basement was just stinky. And so she would do anything to get the smell out. And the one day I got off the ice and I took my chest protector off and I just a full rash. And I went home. It's like, what did you do? And she goes, well, it was kind of stinky. So I sprayed it with lemon Lysol. I said, never do that again. It was like 2-3 weeks for every time I put that thing on until all of that Lysol leached out of it. And I was getting a rash every time I went on the ice. So it was just so funny. It's like, what did you do, Mom? But another thing I know from the goalies of the era you played and the era I came up with, and this included, the goalies of the 90s, is the difference in the way we played the puck. It was very Marc-Andre Fleury-esque in that there's no give up. And you were quoted as saying, stop the puck any way you can. Get a leg on it, get a hand on it. Where it seems like today, a lot of goalies, they're the blocking goalie. And if this save selection doesn't work, they didn't have that scramble or that athleticism that was just innate back, not that long ago.
Yeah. I mean, I was taught you make your first save, you get back on your feet as quick as possible so you can make the second and possibly the third.
Yeah.
It wasn't, you got down, blocked the puck, and you stayed down. You had to bounce around a little bit, and the sooner you could get to your feet, the sooner you could move.
Yeah. And if you can't get up, like you said, you get
something
whatever
over.
you can. Yeah, you
leg,
get something
arm,
over.
head.
Yeah, Andrei Vasilevsky is a great example of that. I mean, he's done those scorpion saves, just kicking that back leg up and catching the puck, or he's done those behind the back catches.
I would have loved to have been 6'6". There'd be a lot more body to throw around.
Yeah, and that's another thing that interests me, and I don't know if it angers me in the modern game, is some of these teams won't even look at a goalie if they're not 6'3". And how many great goalies, Mike Richter, John Van Beesbrook, Kelly Rudy, so many goalies, yourself, you're the same height as me. We wouldn't even get a look by scouts today just because of our height. But look at how many of you from that era are some of the best to ever play the game.
Well, the part that they forget is you got to stop the puck.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're 6'5" or 6'6", or whether you're 5'8", 5'9".
Yeah.
Excuse me. If you can stop the puck, that's all that matters.
Well,
you look at Dustin Wolf in Calgary right now, playing for the Wranglers. The best goalie in the American League the last 2 years running, most valuable player. He's maybe 5'11" on a good day.
Yeah.
But he just finds a way to get hit.
Yeah.
And that's what you want to see. He's a battler.
When in youth hockey, as soon as you learn how to stand in the position properly, the next thing we're taught is angles and positioning. So as long as you're good with them, you're as big as the next guy if you know where your depth should be.
Well, if you're a smaller guy, you use depth to your benefit, where you can move out a little bit further. Now you all of a sudden you're the optical illusion of you're bigger than you are.
Yeah.
Certain times you stay out, certain times you back in, you keep guys guessing, but you have that illusion that you are bigger than you really are.
Yep, exactly. And like you said, that's one of the first things we learn in, goalie school when we're playing youth hockey is the importance of your angles and your positioning. And some of the coaches will even, in our day, before they had iPads, I could show the pictures of it. They would bring the strings out to either end of the post, and okay, when your shoulders hit this, and they would get the other goalies come and look. Oh, okay, but now they just do it right with the iPad, and the kid can see themselves. They don't have to look at their buddies in that to see how that works.
No, it's gotten easier over the years. Back then, you just had to kind of figure it out on your own. They didn't have goalie coaches back then either.
No,
that was the other thing. You had to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, and I mean that's a great point. Back in those days, your goalie partner was almost your goalie coach, because that's who you bounce the ideas off of.
He was your sounding board. Other than that, between the two of you, if you couldn't figure it out, then you were both in trouble.
Yeah. And, talking about Andy Moog again, in the documentary, you talk about how good of friends you guys were. You guys were friends and partners. You weren't foes and competitors. You both wanted to play, but you both also wanted to win. So I got to imagine there were a lot of conversations about each other's games. Like, what do you see him?
Yeah, if a guy's struggling, then you tried to help him. I think that's the biggest thing. And Andy was great to have as a partner because we pushed each other. You pushed each other for ice time. You pushed each other to make the team better. So the better you were, the better he was. The better he was, the better you were, the better the team is. And at the end of the day, back then, it all came down to how do we make the team successful? And it should still be that way. Sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle, but it should be, you want to push each other to make the team better.
Yeah. And I learned that when I was in college, and I was a 4-year JV all-star. And as my teammate, or not my teammate, but my buddies would say, I had the fastest score in the MIAC for 4 years. I was a backup goalie for 4 years, but you know what? I knew what my role was. And that was, I had to be the best I could in practice and make life hard on the guys. I had to be that locker room guy. And that was my role. And I helped my fellow goalie partners out where I could. And when I got my chance to play, hey, I went out there and did my best and had fun.
Yeah, and that's all it is you want to go out, you want to push your partner so that he's better, but you want to support him at the same time.
Yeah.
And if you're both playing well, then the team benefits, the team wins. And if the team wins, everybody wins.
Exactly. And, at the end of the day, too, it's those other goalies in the locker room that understand what you're going through. We all have those teammates in practice. I think back to my college days, and there was the one kid, he had the hardest shot on the team, not the fastest, the hardest shot. And so, some forwards don't know the difference there. They're like, what do you mean the hardest shot? And it's like, it's the way it feels when it hits you. It just hits you harder. And it's like, normally in practice, if the other goalie's getting out of that, it means you're getting in. But if we looked up and saw Ian coming down and the other goalie got out, we're like, no, he's just taking the shot off. He doesn't want the bruise today. It's like, those are the things you talk about too as goalie partners is, the tendencies of your teammates. Who's going to hurt you in practice versus who's not.
Oh yeah. The guys that got the big heavy shots. I mean, you get a guy like Al McKinnis had the heavy shot. A guy like Reed Larson had a heavy shot. And then you get guys like Brett Hull that have the quick shot.
Yeah. Reed that. I actually went to school with Reed's daughter. I always forget that was her dad.
Okay. Yeah, he could shoot the puck.
Yeah. It's almost a shame he was stuck in Detroit during those lean years for Detroit because, he had a shot.
Yeah, we brought him into Edmonton for a little while, so we get to see it every day for a while. It didn't look like it was coming at you, but it was always heavy and it would always roll off of you. Some hit you and stay out. Some just kind of roll off you and always head towards the net.
Yeah. Another kid I skated with was a fellow by the name of Brian Trottier Jr. And his dad had a decent shot.
Yeah, right. Brian was one of those guys. He had that quick release.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that heavy shot, but it was the quick release, and it was always from a good spot.
Yeah.
Trotz always put himself in the perfect position to get a shot off.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up the point too, is it's not always the hard shot or, the quick shooter. It's how fast do they get it off? How quick is the release? And Brett Hull, like you said, same thing. It's how quick the puck came off their stick. There's just some of those guys, they don't need that big windup or, the big follow through. It's just that quick little snapshot. And those are, to me, harder to stop than those hard shots because it's just boom, all of a sudden it's right on you.
Oh no, those are harder to read than if a guy's got the big windup. I would love to see a guy with a big windup because I knew I could read it. And you had time to move, time to get in position. Where a guy that released it right away, you didn't have near as much time, so you had to be a little bit quicker.
Yeah. Well, and I love the old highlights of Wayne with his great big windup. And it's like the goalie knew it was coming. He's coming down to the hash marks trying to cut down the shot, but it's still going in the net, because he just had that shot. Yeah.
He'd find spots. It wasn't going to overpower you, but if you gave him a little 4-inch spot, he could squeeze a puck in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I had the conversation with some kids who never got to see him play is like, yeah, if you just watch the highlights of him skating, you don't appreciate how good he really was. Cause what makes Wayne separate from, I think, other greats, we're looking at Ovechkin right now, and even Austin Matthews is his smarts for the game. He always talks about going, not where the puck is, but where it's going. And that's hard for some people to understand what that really means.
No, guys get puck focused, and Wayne was never puck focused. It was like, okay, where's the open ice? Where's the puck going to go? How do I get there? And where's the next guy going to be when I do get the puck?
Yep.
Whereas most guys think, okay, now I've got the puck. Now I'm going to think about where I'm going. Well, Wayne's already thought about where he's going with it before he's even got it. Yeah. So he's a step ahead of everybody else, and he hasn't even got the puck yet.
Well, it's the classic case of somebody playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers.
That's actually a great way of describing it.
He knew 4 steps ahead, not only where he was going, but he knew where you were going and the other guy was going. And it's fun now in the beer leagues where because we have this great view of the ice where I see the ice, I see where we should put the puck, but I also know which one of my defensemen have the puck, and I know which opposing player they're about to pass the puck to. So I'm getting ready in those instances.
Oh no, and that's the fun of doing the TV and radio here for Coachella Valley is sitting watching the game. You can see everything develop because you're used to seeing it up close and personal. So now you're up in a concourse watching the game. You can pretty much predict where the puck's going to go long before it gets there just because you're used to seeing it. But now you've got all this extra time to watch it. And people wonder, well, how do you know it's going there? Well, it has to go there because that's the space that's open. And it's fun to try and explain that to people.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a fan of when I go to games, I like to get tickets higher up, in the upper ends of the bowl because you see more of the play. And when I was younger, we'd go to Blackhawks games or Chicago Wolves games, me and my dad, and he would kind of lean over and go, so what are you looking at? What are you seeing? Because he didn't play hockey growing up. And so I would explain to him, the different plays, if it was a power play, are they playing a diamond? Are they playing a umbrella? What are they doing? And it was learning for him, but it was, what are you like? I know what I'm watching, but what are you watching? What are you seeing? Because we were seeing 2 different games.
Oh yeah, well, you can see it as a fan, or you can see it as a goalie.
Yeah,
I mean we've got a lot of new fans here that you try and get into the building so they can see the game, and the ones that have never been, I'm like, if you want to see it through goalie's eyes, go down and warm up and stand behind the net.
Yep.
And it shocks them how quick it is and how hard the puck's actually shot, and how little time you actually have to react. They're like, it's so much faster than I thought. I'm like, yeah, it looks easy on TV. It looks easy from up top. You get down there along the ice and get a chance to see it and see through bodies and such. That's what it looks like for a goalie.
I have not met a person who's seen a hockey game live the first time that doesn't enjoy the game after that. They may have like not understand. They don't even have to understand, but they may have not liked it because it just looks boring on TV. But once they see it live, they're like, I like this game. This is fun to watch. They might only be able to see it live to watch it because TV is different, but seeing it live and the speed is totally different.
Oh no, there's nothing like it. And especially here in the Valley, we've got all new hockey fans pretty much.
Yeah.
So once you get them in the building, they keep coming back because the game live, there's nothing better. I swear it's still the best sport live, where you get the speed, you get the size of the guys, and people realize what good athletes hockey players are.
Yeah, they really do. And, recently moved down to Atlanta. And so I went to a Gladiators game recently with my dad was in town. So we went and we took the kids, and me being me, of course, I got tickets behind the goaltender because that's what I want to see. Yeah. And it was kind of fun because I forget who they were playing that night, but the visiting team goaltender, who I got to sit behind for 2 periods, was Mike Vernon's son.
Oh, okay.
So I saw the name Vernon. I'm like, interesting. So I looked up, sure enough, but it was the first time my kids have sat behind the goalie to see a game like that. And it was interesting, their perspective of it too, because it is a different view than if you're just sitting, going like this, watching side to side.
Oh yeah, no, I still think it's the best view in the rink for somebody that's new to the game to get a read on how fast the game actually is, how big the guys really are, what good athletes they are. You get down in those first 4 or 5 rows, you're right in behind the goalie, you can get that perspective. You'll fall in love with the game.
So you talk that perspective, and I want to say it was 1998, 97, 98 season. One of my friends from high school, her dad would get tickets from work for the Blackhawks, and they were right above the Zamboni entrance behind the visiting goaltender. So I'm like, yeah, I'll take those tickets, no problem. I got tickets 3 games in a row. The first game, I was sitting right behind Patrick Waugh. The second game, I was sitting right behind Roberto Luongo when he was playing in Florida. And the third game, they were playing the St. Louis Blues, and I was sitting right behind you, watching you play. And me as a goalie, I'm like, 3 straight home games, and I'm watching Hall of Famers. But of those 3, it pained me to say this because you were wearing a Blues sweater at the time, but I was more excited to see you than the other ones because you were, full right goalie, and your resume at the time. Patrick was Patrick, but he made the game look easy because he was so good with his positioning. You were a little, you were smaller than him, which meant you had to be a little more athletic too. But I just remember that string of 3 games, how awesome it was to see the 3 of you that close, in your opinion, the best seats in the house.
Yeah, in one of the better buildings at that time too.
Yeah. Well, the Hawks were struggling at that point. Eddie Olczyk was still playing for him, and that was a treat for me because we went to the same high school. So I'm like, all right, I'm seeing somebody from my school that played for my high school team that I'm playing for at that time, playing for the Hawks. Denny Savard, I think, was still with the Hawks for his second go around at that point. That was a fun time. And even in those lean years, those Hawk crowds were hostile.
Oh no, they were fun to play in front of. You knew they were going to be into the game regardless of what the game was like. Yeah,
I remember it was the Blackhawks put out a great commercial in the mid-90s when they were still going to Western Conference Finals, and they still had that great rivalry with Detroit. And Jeremy Piven, the actor, he's originally from Chicago, and he's sitting up in the 300 level, and he's going on and on about how his dad used to bring him to the games, and he taught him, one of the most important lessons in life, and he just starts belting out, Detroit sucks from the 300. Well, like the week that commercial came out, Detroit comes to town. I have tickets to that game, and during a TV timeout, they start playing that commercial, and the whole crowd's getting into it. And then they flash to Scotty Bowman on the bench, just looking up, and you can read his lips. He's going, "What the F is this? Like, it was just like, oh my God, but I think even he was amused by it.
Oh, no, you can never say a Hawks crowd was not into a game. They were always into the game, and it would always be entertaining.
Yeah. So we've been talking a while. I want to be mindful of time, and I end every episode asking every goalie the same 10 questions. So I've asked all of the pro goalies I've had on, all the bantams. But before I get to that, there's 2 topics I want to touch on. When you were in St. Louis toward the end of your career, you set a record by playing 79 games that season. I don't think we're ever going to see that. We're never going to see that again the way. Yeah. Well, to your point, for a pro athlete, yeah, you were considered old at the time. I think both of us would like the knees you had at that time today. But you were considered old, but you play 79 games. And now with the way they have load management and everything else, we're never going to see that again. So my question is, why didn't you play 82 games that season? You were that close.
No, I banged up a knee in Detroit one afternoon, an afternoon game. So instead of pushing it, I actually got a couple of days off.
Okay.
But I still have a pet peeve with load management. Your load management comes in practice. It doesn't come in games. Games are the fun part. Where goalies get banged up and where your most work is in practice, because you're going up and down 400 or 500 times every day. So when it comes to load management, you manage your practice time. You don't manage your game time. Once the game starts, your body's going to follow whatever your mind tells you. If your mind thinks you're fresh, your body's going to follow that.
Yeah.
Where the problem is guys keep saying, wow, he's tired. And guys listen to it. And I think that's the big issue is guys are always, well, he must be tired. He's young. He's playing too much. It's like, no.
We'd play every day if we were given the chance.
You're putting the gear on. Why not play? Just because you're sitting on the bench doesn't mean you're not going through the whole routine in case you have to play. So when I coached, I had Curtis Joseph his last couple of years in Phoenix. And we got, I forget what it was, 57 or 58 games out. And he was 37, 38 years old at that time.
Yep.
We managed practice time. If he was really tired, you gave him a day off. But it's all about managing your practice time, the mental time, making sure that they've got everything they need. Not the games. The games are the fun part. That's the easiest part of it is the game. So you manage everything else around the game.
Well, and I've had several e-bugs on the podcast, and some of them, a guy like Connor Beaupre in Minnesota, they use him for load management. If a goalie doesn't want to take the morning skate, Connor comes in and he's that practice goalie for him. And I'm surprised more teams don't use their e-bugs in that capacity. And, I know that the fellas on In Goal talk about, how do they not have kind of that third practice goalie option? Maybe somebody like a Connor who's good, who's maybe not going to suit up for you in a game, and you're not going to be sending him down to the minors, but somebody you can trust in practice to stop pucks and make it, challenging on the guys so that starting goalie can get that rest and not have to skate at 10 o'clock in the morning, for an hour, but then play the game again at night. If he wants to, he can, but he doesn't have to.
Yeah. I mean, even if he goes out in the ice for 10 minutes, I used to like to skate every day, but you skate for 10 minutes, get your little bit of work in and then get out.
Yep.
We always in Edmonton, we had one of the city policemen was a goalie, a guy by the name of Floyd Whitney. So if I knew I was playing a lot, you would practice, get a little bit of time in, but once you got your workload done, then I would wander off and watch a bit of practice or go ride the bike, and Floyd would step in and play. So it's funny to me that the modern day teams don't see that. They're more worried about load management. So they'll manage game time, but they won't manage practice time. It seems a little backwards in my world. Yeah,
I wouldn't argue that, especially, with all of the specialization. I mean, have a goalie go do a 20-minute goalie session with the goalie coach and then set them free for the day.
Yeah, or you're doing it anyway. A lot of guys are doing that now before practice, and then you're practicing. So if you're doing that every day.
Yeah, no wonder your goalie's tired.
You're wearing your goalie out. He's not even in the game yet. So you got to manage that.
Yeah. Well, you see it in baseball too with pitchers. Oh, they're on a pitch count. Well, look at a guy like Nolan Ryan or, some of these pitchers from the 80s that were pitching 300 innings regularly. It
It's a
was not
mind, all
uncommon.
it is different mindset.
Yeah.
The modern mindset is the coaches want to manage the player's time instead of the player dictating his time. The player's going to tell you if he's tired.
Yeah.
You just have to figure out a way to manage his practice time to make sure that his head space is clear.
Yeah. And we're seeing it too at some, having just moved from Minnesota, there's a Minnesota Twin where it's like, if he doesn't feel 100%, he doesn't play. Well, after the second game of the season, through the rest of the season, you're not going to feel 100%. You got to learn how to play through that.
Yeah. The only time you're 100% is the first day of training camp. After that, you're operating under 100%.
Yeah, it's exactly, and speaking of that, so, you play 79 games that season, and anybody who's a fan of the game knows what happened in the, playoffs. You go down with that knee injury, and you wind up having major reconstructive surgery in the off season, and you come back and just casually play another 73 games.
Yeah, again, goes back to mindset. And
yeah,
I mean, I was lucky enough. I got to work with Bobby Kersey, so it was all about managing how my body felt. And if I needed a day off from practice, I got the day off from practice to just work on the body. But come game time, I wanted to play, and we just made sure the body was able to go out and play. Yeah, there's a lot of days I played at 70, 75%. But once the adrenaline of the game kicks in, that 75% becomes 100%.
Yep.
Because adrenaline will make up for the 25% that actually hurts.
Yeah, I remember I threw my back out building the retaining wall so that we could have backyard ice rink when we still lived in Minnesota. And I mean, there were days where getting out of bed was tough. But once I got to the rink and put those pads on, it's almost like there's some kind of magic healing powers of those pads once you get them on. And it's like, well, I don't necessarily feel it once I step on the ice.
No, and that's the big thing. Once the game starts, the adrenaline will kick in and you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's the getting to the rink, going through the motions of getting dressed, going through all that. Once the national anthem starts, your body's going to be just fine.
Well, and the worst was putting our pads on. Kids say have no idea what you and I are about to talk about, but the toe buckle, getting that toe buckle on when you had a bad back or bad knees, getting that leg up and trying to get that toe buckle. There. Yeah, it was like, oh my God. And I just upgraded to a new modern set of equipment 2 years ago. Prior to that, I was wearing my Vaughn Legacies I bought in 1999. They came with a toe buckle on there. They still had 8 straps on each pad. And it's like trying to get that on before every game. Granted, I did upgrade from the toe buckle to, skate laces.
Yeah, by the end
I bought them, but it's like, I love my new pads. I have, it's all Velcro. I had 2 leather straps put on there just because I felt like I needed them. They serve no purpose, but kids today getting just the leg pads on, it was a battle. That's why goalies were flexible back in the 80s is because we had to be to get our pads on.
Oh yeah. The fun of the toe buckles. And I think my last 3 or 4 years, I finally went to a skate lace.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the way through, I still had the 8 straps right up until the day I retired.
When I first got down here, Georgia Tech, they have a club hockey team, but they were having a prospect skate and they didn't have any goalies signed up for it. So they put a message out on the Atlanta goalie Facebook, like, hey, we need goalies. And I was like, I'm kind of an old guy, but I did play college once. And they're like, great, come on out. And so I'm sitting there and they did get 1 or 2 young goalies. And I still have, my skates I bought in 1999, some old Bowers that have the cowling on there. And the one goalie's just staring at him. Was like, what's wrong? He goes, what are those on your skates? I go, what do you mean? He's like, that big white thing on the outside of them. What are those? And I was like, Jesus Christ, kid. I was like, this is what goalie skates used to look like. Well, why did they have that? Well, because we used to be stupid and turn our leg over to make a skate save.
Roll your foot and use your skate.
Yeah. And they're like, what do you mean? And it was funny because I did stack the pads on that skate, and the one kid's like, I've never seen that done before. I was like, do you guys not watch YouTube videos of, your predecessors, the greats of the game? And before we got on the ice, the one kid's like, so like, what's your style when you get out there and play? It's like, well, it's kind of a mix between Cujo and Hasek. And he's just looking at me. He's like, who? He's like, I think I've heard of Hasek, but who's Cujo? And I was like, come on, guys. It's like, I understand some of my equipment is literally older than you guys, but Dominic Hasek, Curtis Joseph, you guys never heard these names before? I think I've heard of Hasek. It's like, well, your homework when you go home tonight is to look up the greats of the 80s and 90s, fellas.
Oh, yeah. I used to look back at the guys, the 50s, 60s, 70s before I played. The Glenn Halls, Terry Sawchuk, Roger Crozier, guys like that. Well, that's how you used to learn.
And that's what I love about your career. Like, when you were coming up, guys like Esposito and Dryden were still playing. And then toward the end of your career, guy like Luongo, who just recently retired, they were playing, so when you look at your career and kind of the bridge of eras, I mean, it's huge. And the goalies you got to compete against and see play live, was just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty fortunate. I got to play against guys that I grew up watching, which is a lot of fun. I got to play against some of the greats of my time and some of the future greats when I was getting out of the game. So I feel like I played in a really good era.
And on top of that, you got your name on the cup 5 times. And, you became the first person of color inducted into the Hall of Fame. Just making the Hall of Fame's got to be, a huge honor. But to have that distinction too, that's got to be pretty special, because I know goalies like Freddie Brathwaite and Kevin Weeks have talked about, your impact on them in the game, not just the game, but them as goalies, and black goalies. And then you got a kid like Malcolm Subban who's out there, that's got to be, just as gratifying, that impact he had in influencing guys like that.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, that's kind of the whipped cream on top of a career. I mean, you go through trying to do as best you can. You try and win a little bit, and you're fortunate enough to do that. And as a goalie, I was always brought up, it's a team game. You win as a team, you lose as a team. Unless you're the goalie, then you lose. Pretty much there's a red light that points out, oh, by the way, you made a few too many mistakes.
Gretzky wins the game, you lose it, right?
Yeah, pretty much, which I'm okay with. I think that's the greatest part of the position, is you make a difference every game, good or bad.
Yep.
But to get into the Hall of Fame is just kind of the whipped cream on top of all that.
Yeah. And, and like I said, it's just that impact, you had on the game. I went to the Stadium Series in Raleigh last year, me, my dad, and my boy. And, of course, that's a core memory day. The three of us sitting outside in 50-degree weather watching hockey while all of these native Carolinians are bundled up in stocking caps and winter jackets, and we've got shorts on. But they had a mobile, like, semi-trailer museum, and it was talking about, the pioneers of the game. And this particular one was specifically on, what was the saying on the outside? It was basically the You Can Play truck, so they had some of Kevin Weeks stuff. Yeah, hockey's for everyone. And, they had, some of you, I remember they had your Buffalo mask in there, and I love goalie masks, so I'm looking at it. I'm not just looking at the art. I'm looking for, where are the chips in the paint? Where are the dents in the cage? But they had some of your equipment in there. It's so cool to me, that you have that impact, that lasting impact on the game. So hopefully, some kid saw that cool mask and like, well, who is this guy? And maybe they went home and pulled up a few YouTube videos, and now they're in awe.
No, you try and leave the game better than you found it. I think that's the biggest thing, is the guys before you made you want to play. So you want to make the guys after you want to play.
Yeah, exactly. So again, being mindful of time, I got the 10 questions I ask everybody. And sometimes these take longer depending on the answers, but the first question I have is, what is the craziest coaching moment from your playing days where a coach just lost it? And I know you got to have at least one because you played for Mike Keenan. But what's where a coach was just like, oh my God, is this really happening?
Craziest moment. We played in Toronto one night, and I'd given up 3 or 4 not great goals. And Glenn Sather called a timeout. So, of course, you go to the bench, and he just asked me if I was interested in maybe making a save before the game was over. So that's one of the funnier moments.
It's like, gee, thanks, Glenn. I appreciate that.
No, yeah, national TV. It's always good.
Yeah.
So as a young guy, that's one of those eye openers where you figure you better get to things very quickly.
Yeah. Well, at the same time, from a coaching standpoint, it's, well, maybe this will calm him down too.
Yeah. I mean, it's his way of saying you need to be better, but doing it with a sense of humor.
Yeah.
So that you get the message loud and clear, but at the same time, you're not rattled by it.
Exactly. I remember my very first high school varsity start. The very first shot goes by me. The ref comes, gets the puck, looks at me, goes, well, we got that one out of the way. Are we going to have a good game now? It was like, I'm supposed to be picking on you, not the other way around. But yeah, let's have a good game. And yeah, I wound up going on to have a decent game. And, but it was funny. Just, well, we got that out of the way. So you had some great ones, but what is your favorite all-time goalie mask? Where you just look at it and go, God, that's a great looking mask. Doesn't have to be yours.
Oh, geez. Gilly Meloche had one when he played for the Cleveland, back then the Barons, I guess.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. Gilles Breton and his lion mask. I got a kick out of that one. Yeah. I like my first one.
Yeah, that was a sweet one.
That was a lot of fun. So yeah, masks like that. The bone mask, the Dryden Moore.
Yeah, he had some cool ones, and even the subtlety of his one that had, it looked like the circles, but when you looked at it, it had the outline of the Canadiens logo. That I don't think most non-goalies actually pick up on that one, but goalies do. So, we talked about your career and how it spanned, the 3 decades, and it went from the old buildings that they never wanted to replace to all of a sudden it's like every 15 years a team's got to have a new building. What's your favorite rink that you ever played in?
I was a big fan of the old building. All the original 6 buildings I loved because you saw them on TV as a kid. So Chicago Stadium, Boston Garden was one of my favorites. Maple Leaf Gardens. Obviously, Montreal at the Forum was a great place to play. I think the first year I played in there, they still had wooden boards. So just the old traditional buildings, just because of the history in those buildings.
Yeah. And I remember walking into the Chicago Stadium. I was junior high, but that first time walking in and just you feel the history of those buildings when you walk into them. Whereas the United Center, you walk in there now, there's some great history in that building from the Bulls to the Blackhawks, but you don't feel that walking in there the way you did those old buildings for some reason.
The old buildings, the fans were right on top of you. The new buildings kind of go outward, so the fans are away from you. But some of the older buildings, like the Spectrum in Philly and that, the fans were right over top of you.
Yeah.
And it brought more life to the game.
It did. It was fun. So what is your favorite stick that you ever used in your playing days?
Oh, geez. I'd never ever thought about that.
That's one always stumps guys, but they always have that one that they're just like, oh yeah, it was.
Some of the Sherwoods I liked. Some of the different colors. Like we brought out the bright orange.
Yeah.
Had the navy blue for a little while. So those are probably my favorite ones.
Well, and I mean, you were a guy that liked to move the puck a little bit too. You had your 14 assists the one year. Yeah,
we just kick rebounds in the right places.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because I was telling my teammates, I was going to have you on the podcast. And I'm like, well, you got to let them know you're encroaching on his record. You've got 2 now this season. So, he better watch out. You might break it. And I'm like, yeah. Although one of them was, like you said, it bounced off me. My teammate took it, made the pass. The other guy went and scored. But The other assist was a pretty nice assist. Bounced it off the boards, hit the guy. He went and scored the goal to the point where the ref came back to me to make sure he had the right number to put on the score sheet.
Those are always good. But
Yeah.
no, with our group came back in our end. They didn't want to stop. They wanted to circle. So if you could direct pucks into where they were circling, it made for a quick transition.
Well, that was one of the things when I was watching Making Cocoa there, talked about how you had a habit of not just stopping the puck. We were taught kick the puck to the corner, but you would kick it out knowing that they were circling. So it was almost like you were passing them the puck by kicking it to them.
Well, you tried to direct your rebounds into the traffic pattern.
Yeah.
That's the way we described it back then, is if I could get the puck into the traffic pattern, our guys are going to transition it, force the other guys to play more defense.
Yeah. Exactly. So the next one's a fun one. What is your favorite youth hockey memory?
Favorite youth hockey? Probably when I froze my feet the first time. I love being a goalie. And
yeah,
I missed the memo early that it actually, when your feet freeze, when they thaw out, they actually hurt. But
yeah,
for as much as it hurt and as many tears as there were, you couldn't wait to do it again the next day.
Yeah.
So, and it left a lasting memory.
And you find thicker socks.
You tried all sorts of different things, and then you just realized that, guess what? That's the way it's going to be. And for as much as it hurt, and you say you didn't want to do it again, you get up the next morning and you couldn't wait to be able to do it again.
Yeah. Which is probably part of the reason we're goalies. We weren't that smart about things like that. We had short memory spans. But you have to.
The best thing you can have as a goalie is a short memory.
Yeah, that's what I loved about that show, Ted Lasso. Be a goldfish.
Yeah.
10-second memory. There's so much truth to that, especially as a goalie. I mean, after they teach you angles and positioning, they teach you got to have that short memory. That goal goes in. All right, you're as good as your next shot.
Overdone, nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. So, what is the best chirp you heard on the ice, off the ice, directed at you, not directed at you?
I don't even remember a whole lot of really good ones. Some probably for my own teammates. I know Prongs was giving me a hard time about throwing him a pass one day, so I hit him square on the logo with the next pass. So that cleared things up very quickly.
Yeah, he's a tall guy too, so you had to get some height on that puck.
Oh yeah, that was the fun of all. Or Hully would complain that you didn't get the pass on his stick, so the next one would be about waist high, and it fixes a lot of ALs that way.
I liked Brett Hall's son. He had a tweet that went viral because TSN, I think it was, put it out there. What's your excuse for not making it to the show? And he said, my dad and grandpa combined for 1,300 points in the NHL, and I chose to be a goalie.
Yo, Jude. Yeah.
Yeah. he's a fun fellow.
He's the brains of the operation in that family.
Having met his grandpa and him, that's not saying much.
No. You want to be a goalie? That's the smart section. You want to be the goalie.
Yeah. I talked to Eddie Belfour, and he said he just loved when Brett would bring Jude to practice because Eddie was his favorite goalie, and he's just eating it up that his dad wasn't his favorite player. It was somebody else, and it happened to be him.
Oh no, it was all about the goalies. They love the goalie stuff. Love the goalies.
Yeah. So this next one's always very polarizing with some people. What was the worst post-game beer?
Oh, the worst post-game beer. No, I wasn't a beer drinker back then.
All right, so, we can modify it to what was the worst post-game beverage?
There's some bad rums back in the day that weren't great. But no, if it's a good game, there's never really a bad beverage.
Yep, that was my team in Minnesota, my beer league team. Our motto was, if there's nobody gets hurt and there's cold beer in the locker room, doesn't matter what the scoreboard says, it's a victory.
So yeah, nowadays you get out of bed, that's a win.
Yep, exactly. In this next one, I talk about that question being polarizing. This one really is. when you taped your stick, did you go heel to toe or toe to heel?
I went toe to heel.
Okay, so you're actually in the minority here. Most goalies were heel to toe. Is there a reason you went toe to heel?
That's just how my dad showed me the first time I taped the goalie stick. He started on the toe and went down to the heel, and I just continued it on right through my career.
That's a great reason for it. I remember I was talking to Connor Beaupre about it. He said, well, he plays the puck an awful lot, and to him, he feels like the way the tape is, it just comes off the tape better. And I'm like, well, I'm not good at playing the puck, so that's not an issue for me. But, I grew up with wooden sticks, specifically always use those Christian sticks, and, they were good, but that heel was like a sponge and just like that. So, you'd have to put the wood glue in there and put it in the vise. But, goalies today, they don't even tape past the heel. It's just the blade. But when you use the wood stick, you want to get that heel so that it preserved it and it lasted longer. And,
oh, yeah, he taped it all the way around the heel and up another couple inches even.
Yeah, I mean, I got my stick back there because I got to retape it. I still go past that heel, just out of habit. Probably don't have to, but it's old habits die hard. I think I know this one, but I'm still going to ask it. What was your favorite number to wear and why?
31, probably because I got it as a kid. It was one of the first jerseys I wore, and then was lucky enough to get it out in Victoria when I played junior, and had to give it up my first year pro because Eddie Mio had it when I got to Edmonton. And as soon as we traded Eddie, I went right back to it.
I was going to say, yeah, you started in Edmonton with one and then switch. It's like, in fact, I have it right here. Eddie Belfour, when he started with the Hawks, was 31. And so that was on his rookie card. And when he signed the rookie card I have for him, he actually signed it 31 because attention to detail. He knew that's what he was wearing in that picture.
Oh, yeah, the rookie card one's got a 1 on the sleeve.
Yeah. I never liked the number 1. It felt like I didn't have a number on my back. There's just something about, those numbers in the 30s, those goalie numbers where it's like, all right, I feel something there. That feels right.
And it was just different at that time.
Yeah.
You had the 1, you had 30. Those were your 2 goalie numbers. Then Tony came in, it was 35. So there were the 3 basic numbers.
Yep.
Then Dryden came in at 29. Gilly Meloche came in at 27. So the numbers had started to vary by the time I started.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I asked the question, because you're seeing goalies today with all kinds of weird numbers,
Vassey's got 88.
50, Carter Hart 74. But I like Carter Hart's reasoning for it. When he came into training camp, that's what they gave him. And there was some young kid that must have been a goalie, liked him. So he got his Carter Hart jersey with 74, and he found out about it. He's like, well, I'm not changing my number now because I don't want that kid to have to get a new
pennies
jersey.
They gave you in training camp.
Yeah. But the reason I wind up asking this question is when I first started the podcast, I had my college goalie coach on, and he's like, why do goalies have these weird numbers these days? It's like, I don't know. I had a traditional number. Said I started out with 30. I went to 35 in high school. I said the only reason I had 39 in college was because 35 was taken by an upperclassman and 39 was the biggest jersey in the cabinet. So that's why I went that route. So that's when I started asking that question is not only what's the number, but what's the reasoning behind it? And when a goalie has a non-traditional number, there's usually a good story behind it.
There's got to be something behind it normally.
Yeah. And so that's why I like to ask that one. So the last question, and this is my favorite one, is what advice do you have for young goaltenders?
Well, I think the biggest advice I'd say is you got to have fun. Right? More than anything, there's a million different ways of stopping the puck.
Yep.
But most of the kids I talk to today, if you can get on your feet, get on your feet. I mean, I know they teach guys to slide around on their knees and such, but I still think you've got more mobility if you can get up on your feet.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to usually see the play better. You can.
Yeah. Well, you give your chance. You give yourself a chance
low.
in the second and third shot.
Yep. Exactly. So, well, Grant, it's been a real treat chatting with you. Just like every conversation with every goalie I've had on here, it just feels like we're old teammates, just chatting hockey, because that's exactly what it is. Just 2 goalies having a conversation.
No, it's my pleasure. It's always fun.
Yeah.
Anything to talk goaltending and hockey.
Yeah. It makes me wish I was better at golf so that we could talk more golf. You'll appreciate this story. So I'm not a very good golfer. In 96, when the Olympics were going on, we went to England because my grandmother was a war bride. We still had family over there. And we were just talking when we first got over. My uncle found out I had never gone golfing at that point. I was 15 years old. And so he tells me and my dad, he's like, we're going to wake up early tomorrow and we're going to go golfing. And I looked at him. I was a smart ass kid. And I said, so we're going, or no, he goes, we're going to go golfing in the birthplace of golf tomorrow. And I look at him and I said, so we're going to Scotland tomorrow? And he just looks at me. He goes, no, Great Britain is the birthplace of golf. And I was like, I know where you're going. So we just went to this little municipal golf course, and we got there early because technically you had to be 18 to golf there. But he pulled a few strings. He's like, hey, they're in from the States. He's never golfed, and they're like, all right, just be the first ones out so you don't. Well, he started keeping score, and then he continued to keep score just to see how high it would go. My first round of golf, I shot a 198. And he's tallying everything up at the end of the round. And he goes, well, we got our greens fees worth today, fellas.
Yeah, it's definitely getting your money's worth.
Yeah, but it was funny because there's a par 5, and I wound up getting a birdie. And I was all excited. And he goes, don't get too excited. Golf's a humbling sport. Well, sure enough, the next hole, it's a par 3. My first, I drive it, and it hits into the bunker. And it's one of those good English bunkers where it's got the lip like that. And my ball's right here. And the pin's over here. So I get up there, and I watched enough golf to know what I should do. Hit it, chip it back into the sand trap, and then up. So I go get ready to do that. And he's looking at me, go, what are you doing? I explain. He goes, no, just swing through. He's like, you're young, you're strong, muscle it through. And it's like, but uncle, it's just going to back. He's, no, it's not. So I'm like, all right, you're the old season golfer here. I'm going to do what you say. And so I do that, and it just right back down to where it was. It's just like in a cartoon. And I looked at him and said, I told you, no, just keep doing it. So I 4 or 5 strokes, doing this. And finally my dad's like, well, I'm going to play through. And so my uncle looks over to see him. And at that, I just chipped the ball back to where I said I wanted to get it. And he turns around and he goes, what did you do? I told him, I go, well, you got to play it from there now. So then I chip it up onto the green. I got like 3 feet from the pin. He looked at me and said, well, how do you like them apples? If you would have just let me do what I wanted in the first place, I wouldn't be racking up my score. And he goes, it's golf. It's going to humble you.
They can use that line pretty much any day on any golf course.
Yep. Yeah. But, it's one of those core memories, just the 3 of us out on the golf course for that first round.
It's not a bad thing.
No, it's always fun getting. I rarely ever golf because I'm not good at it, but when I do, it's always a good time, and it's a good time because of the people I'm with.
Yeah, that's the beauty of golf. It's relaxing, and it's all about the people that you're out there wandering around with.
Yeah, in fact, my son's buddy's coming to visit over Christmas, and we're going to go to Topgolf.
There you go. Topgolf's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is, because my dad likes to call golf hit and chase, and Topgolf, we just have to hit it. We don't have to go chasing it.
That's never a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, as I tell all my guests, I used to tell them, if you're ever in Minnesota, let me know. We'll grab a drink. But now that I'm down in Atlanta, if your golfing game ever brings you through the land of golf, let me know. We'll get together. We'll talk some more goaltending and grab a drink together. It's
a deal.
All right. Well, you have a great rest of your night, and we'll keep in touch.
Sounds good. Take care.
All right. Thank you, Grant. Still not sure how I managed to get Grant on the podcast, but I sure enjoyed the conversation and hope you did too. Be sure to follow Grant on Instagram at GrantFuhr31, all one word, and on Twitter at GrantFuhr, again, one word. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube simply by searching for Wash Up Goalie, and I'll pop up. Visit washupgoalie.com for some great hockey-related content, my beer league hockey video highlights, and of course, all podcast episodes. If you want some Wash Up Goalie gear or Tendy Talk apparel, be sure to visit my Threadless shop by clicking the merchandise link on the website. If you like this podcast, go listen to the BLPA Big Show. It's the OG BLPA Podcast Network show where a couple of beer league players talk beer league hockey, draft experience shenanigans, and exploits from around the game. Be sure to check out the full lineup of hockey-related podcasts on the Hockey Podcast Network as well. There are too many to list here, but shows like Two Girls, One Stanley Cup podcast, the Starcastic Remarks podcast, and the Red Wings Rant podcast can all be found. I need to thank the band Zambonis for allowing me to use their music on my episodes. You can download their music on iTunes or listen wherever you stream music from. As always, I'm working on lining up other goalies to talk to, and after 100 plus episodes, it's becoming harder and harder. If you are a goalie or have connections to a goalie who I should talk to, shoot me an email at washupgoalie39@gmail.com or send me a DM on social media. And finally, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, and comment on the podcast platform you're listening on. It's a quick action on your part that helps others find Tendy Talk. So, until next time, keep your stick on the ice and your body square to the puck.
Yeah, Dave.
Hey, have you checked out the pond today?
It's funny you ask. I was just down there this morning.
Yeah, any good news?
Well, Dave, the pond?
Yeah?
It's froze right over.